So from your perspective, what were really the big takeaways in terms of the obstacles? I mean, is it just the complexity? Is it specific components of the system
Yeah.
that are really the obstacles? Where can we maybe target our efforts?
Well, we can probably target them at many levels, but essentially, I think you can think of this as maybe 4 or 5 steps from a drug going from discovery, if you like, to being, if you like, bench to bedside would be the kind of
Yeah.
phrase. So from discovery to actually bedside. By that, I'm going to mean being publicly reimbursed in every province and territory. So firstly, of course, we learn that there's a new drug and that it's positive and that it works. And so, for example, I just recently was at the World Conference on Lung Cancer in early September, and the first clinical trial result in the main plenary session was a new drug. It's called ivonescimab for what it's worth, but let's just call it drug A. And it turns out that drug A is better than drug B. It's basically a novel type of immunotherapy which also targets tumor blood vessel growth. So for a tumor to grow, it has to kind of recruit its own blood vessels. So this is a drug which targets it uses sort of a traditional immunotherapy approach plus this, we call it angiogenesis approach. Anyway, it turns out if you put those two together in one drug, it was better than immunotherapy. So that's stage one. We learn at a conference, oh, look, there's a really strong positive trial. This is a drug that we think we might want. Now, it turns out for that particular drug, there's some other trials happening we'll have to wait for, but in principle, clinical trial first. It's like, okay, so we want this drug. The pharmaceutical company makes it. They obviously have their positive trial. They want to market their drug. So the first thing they'll do is they'll apply to Health Canada. And Health Canada will issue what's called an NOC, or Notice of Compliance. And that is basically an assessment of the drug, which says, yes, this drug works. 2, it's safe. So yes, you can have this drug in the Canadian market, and it's assigned what's called a DIN, a drug identification number. So from that moment, in theory, I can prescribe the drug. The problem is no one yet is going to pay for it. So Health Canada is the first step. Health Canada is maybe not the biggest obstacle. They work to pretty clear timelines. It's a bit more transparent. There are some issues sometimes. We want them to do what's called an expedited review and go faster, and they won't. We sort of argue back and forth if we think there's a real unmet need. But that's the first step. Health Canada's actually got a thing called Project Orbis. If you've heard of this, it's basically the Canadian system, US, a few other countries. I think Singapore, maybe Australia, UK, maybe have the countries wrong, but something like that. And basically, it means that if one country does the work, the other countries can kind of piggyback onto it to make it faster. So in theory, that sounds great. Oh, we're going to get regulatory approval faster. But all it does is it gets us maybe Health Canada a bit faster, but it doesn't. We need all of the other steps. So step one, like a successful drug, like from a clinical trial. Step 2, Health Canada. Step 3 is the health technology assessment process. So that's gone through various names. Back in the day, it was JODR, the Joint Oncology Drug Review. Then it became PCODA, the Pan-Canadian Oncology Drug Review. And then it became the CDA, the Common Drug Review Pathway. And in the middle it was CADA, the Canadian Agency for Drugs and Therapeutics in Health. So it's gone through all of these different versions, but essentially does the same thing. In Quebec, it's NS that does the same thing. Mm-hmm. So health technology is where now we're saying, okay, you've got a drug, it's effective, it's safe, but do we want it in Canada? Do we want this in our formulary? Does this add value for patients? Is it any better than what we're already doing, or is it just because of just another option? So that's a process where we get to provide clinicians input, patients get to provide input to that. And you need to get a positive recommendation there to move to the next step. So if you get a positive recommendation there, then, okay, so that's now step 3, done. That's positive, because mostly if you get through steps 1, 2, and 3, you're ultimately going to make it to market. But there are examples where it doesn't happen because of step 4, which is then, okay, there's a drug, it's licensed in Canada, we've decided that we would like it from the HTA. Now, number 4, can we afford it? And so that's the PCPA. There's a test at the end of this, by the way, guys. PCPA, the Pan Canadian Pharmaceutical Alliance. So that's confidential. We never know the results of this. It's all behind closed doors. It doesn't work to any particular timeline. This is definitely an area where we could intervene a bit and say we'd like some more transparency, and we'd like some set timelines. The website is a bit better than it used to be. It can tell you if a drug there's been an application, and whether it's sort of in the queue, or whether it's undergoing negotiations, or whether there's an LOI and a letter of intent issued at the end of it, successful or unsuccessful. So that's where the negotiations happen. And basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to negotiate the provinces. So the provinces all sit on PCPA, and they take turns as a province being the lead negotiator. And they're trying to negotiate a discount. So if, like a lot of the oral therapies for lung cancer now, as a ballpark, their list price is around $10,000 a month. I think it's crazy expensive. Now, some are less, some are a bit more, but it's a ballpark. So PCPA is negotiating a discount. And we don't exactly know how much that discount is. We get a sense it's around 80%, maybe more, based on some of the comments that are now being put in the health technology assessment recommendations. So, we recommend that you fund this, provided it's cost effective, and we recommend like an 80% reduction or whatever. So it has to go through PCPA. And there are some really disappointing examples in lung cancer where this has failed. So in particular, there's a combination of drugs for a rare subtype called BRAF lung cancer, where there's 2 drugs called dabrafenib and trametinib, and the company were unable to negotiate a price for lung cancer patients with this BRAF lung cancer. What was particularly galling is that they did successfully negotiate a price for BRAF subtype of melanoma, same drugs, different cancer. And so it left us at Lung Cancer Canada just fuming, angry, mad, upset, frustrated. We wrote to PCPA and we said, we think that you're penalizing lung cancer patients. It's just another example of stigma against lung cancer patients. And the response we got was, we can't discuss the negotiations. They're all confidential. So, and so, look, it's difficult to know. It's easy for me to sit here and throw PCPA under the bus here, but there's 2 parties to that negotiation. The drug companies there as well, and we just don't know. But what we do know is that if you've got a BRAF subtype of lung cancer right now in Canada, you don't have access to these drugs unless you've got private insurance to pay for them.